In this session, we'll be talking about the journey to Beingful Leadership. This is something I've written about in my book on Beingful Leadership called Two Birds in a Tree. But let's revisit again. Let's see it from a different perspective. And this journey at a high level is all about first recognizing this sense of self we've been talking about, this sense of purpose, and at some level understanding the role of work. So that's the recognition phase. And then often it's just a recognition in our mind. It's only a cognitive awareness. We sort of know it, but we don't really feel it. And that feeling, that experiencing it, that living it in a way, comes through when you actually experience it. And that's when it gets deepened. So what was in your mind now becomes part of your whole being or your body. But that's not enough, because those feelings go away, those thoughts go away. You need to find a way to anchor in it. You need to be steady in it. That anchoring is a very critical one. That's the one I've struggled with the most. Recognition has been fine. About 20, 30 years ago, that's where I recognized what beingfulness was about. I experienced it. I talked of near-death experiences and other experiences. But finding that anchor, being grounded in it, has been the challenge of my life. And that's what I'm going through now. Hopefully in the next, who knows, the rest of my life, I'll find that anchor. But then comes what is the most important phase after that, which is leading by example. You can't lead others unless you lead by example. That is what integrity is about. In particular, something called behavioral integrity. You behave according to what you say. And that's why these are the 4 phases of Beingful Leadership. It is a long journey. It's if you're informed about it, if you're aware of it, hopefully it's 2 to 3 years or so, 1,000 days journey. But if you have no idea about it, it will take many decades. And one goal of beingfulness, Beingful Leadership, is to reduce this journey for other people, to make it easier for them to go through recognition, experience, anchoring, and leadership, and then acquire those leadership competencies that come along with each of those phases. Now, these are all concepts, and they're not easy to grasp. But let me see if I can try to make sense of it through Pavitra's example. So, Pavitra, when you first heard of beingfulness, which was some time ago, what were the thoughts that came to your mind?
The immediate thoughts?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
The first few thoughts that I had were that I was probably not ready for the level of spirituality it brought with it at that point.
Okay.
But then I started to understand it as a...
So it seemed like a spiritual thing.
It seemed very much like it was a spiritual idea, simply because we were talking about higher purpose, a deeper sense of self, and how we imagine work.
Right.
And I'd come from a quasi-corporate setting by then, which was very...
like alien concepts.
Yes, which is very timelines driven, and like, these are the things we need to do in the next 3 months. I think I brought that to this work with you. You must have noticed that I was very...
task-oriented.
Yeah, task-oriented.
Deadlines and so
on. But so initially it seemed like a concept that I instinctively resisted because it was bigger than I could imagine or apply.
But this is not how work gets done.
Yes.
Was your thought.
Yes. That I thought this was something I needed to think about when I was probably 50 or 60 years old.
Okay, not at my age. Not now. Okay.
Not at this age.
It's not for young people.
No, that's what I thought.
It's for old people like this prof. Right? That's
what I thought. But I think a few things happened over the last couple of years that made me realize that I needed a stop and I needed a pause. And this just started to make a lot more sense then.
I see. And what about it? So in a way, you're going through the recognition phase, right?
Yes.
So what about it? What did you begin to recognize was necessary? What was something to give up?
I think there are certain things that happen where you realize that you need something more than what you see around you to explain it.
Yes.
Or to find courage in the world. So whether it is you're with someone who's on their deathbed or in one of the most challenging situations of their life. And then you want an explanation that's much beyond reality.
Then the immediate explanation is given to you.
Yes, the formula doesn't work anymore.
Right.
And that is what led me to think that I'm probably missing something here that is beyond what I can see or what is tangible.
So in a way, what you point to is the recognition phase kicks in As you mentioned, when the formula isn't working anymore.
Yes.
Something is wrong here.
Yes.
That what I thought would make me happy and find work to be meaningful, all that is not happening.
It's not working.
That something is wrong,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
What do you think? What is that Hindi expression? Lagta hai dal mein kuch kaal hai.
Yeah.
What is that? Lagta hai
yes,
kala
that
hai.
is the one. Yes.
I don't say correctly. But yes, there's something wrong with this
There's
setup.
something just not clicking anymore.
Not
something
clicking.
that worked till then, just not working
Not
anymore.
clicking.
Yeah.
That there is a kind of shaking. in a way.
Yes. Yes.
And so that's recognition.
Yes.
When that happens, you recognize something is not working anymore.
Yes. Yes.
Then you begin to ask yourself, so why is it so? Right?
Yes. Yes.
Right. And so what happened to you? What were the thoughts that came afterwards?
When I realized that it wasn't working, first I panicked because this is the only way I knew. There is you have to work and then you have to get these results. You need to impress these X, Y, and Z, and that's how you get along in life.
Yes.
And then when I realized that wasn't enough and it wasn't giving me the other dimension that I really wanted, I first panicked, but then I started to pause and think that it's probably not so bad to take it slower than that. And so I picked a word for the year, which was going to be intentional.
So the word was intentional?
Yes.
Okay.
On the 1st of January, I decided that
for 2021.
For this year, I'm going to do everything intentionally.
Okay.
Which led me to write to you asking for an opportunity because it was beyond my path. Yeah.
So in a way you set the purpose for that year, that I will change my ways.
Yes, because it was frustrating after a point. Yes. But then, so that's what happened. And then I started to be a little more intentional about everything that I was doing. Make choices, not compromise all the time, but be a little stronger in my choices.
Okay, very interesting. So in a way, that's what's happening. You sort of moved from the old way of looking at things.
Yes.
The old approach.
Yes.
Like almost as the old order is giving place to the new.
To the
right?
new, yes.
To the new, where there's a new reality, new values probably.
Yes.
What you care about.
Yes, what I care about. That has become a lot more clear.
And what are some of these values that you care about?
I think some things that you always thought you'd have time for later in life. I didn't feel like I had that time because this year, especially COVID, I'm sure a lot of people have had these experiences of realizing how important family is or relationships are.
Absolutely.
Something that I'd put off for my 40s or 50s.
Yes.
And then you realize you probably won't even live that long.
Right.
Or you might not have these relationships at that point. So I think one thing I did realize was to focus and to prioritize things that are important to me rather than the only way to succeed.
Very interesting. So notice in a way that these experiences, and certainly COVID has been the experience, is something that deepens something is not right kind of recognition, right?
Yes.
So in your mind, you think something is not fitting in.
Yes.
And then these experiences come in.
Yes.
And they really sharpen it.
There is almost like one day that I can remember where I thought, what does any of this mean if I don't have enough time with my family, then what was the point of all of this?
What triggered that day? What led to that day?
I think I was in a setting that wasn't a very healthy setting, work-wise, wasn't very healthy for me. And simultaneously, my parents got COVID and we were running around trying to figure out all of those things. They were in the ICU. And then suddenly you realize that you just were putting something off for later when you probably would never get that again later in life.
Absolutely.
And I remember that day very clearly. I remember where it was. And I think that's when things sort of shifted for me.
Very interesting. And that's been the experience for so many people.
Yeah.
They were coasting along with one view of the world.
Yes.
Something happens.
Yes.
Unfortunately, it's often something negative, right? And then that shakes you up.
Yes.
That experience then really recalibrates you, right?
Yes.
What is important really clarifies what's important.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I've had the same near-death experience where you realize startups that have failed, that kind of, you realize what is the point in all this? And you don't spend time with your children, in my case.
Yes.
Kids who are very little and then didn't spend enough time. So many of these, not spending enough time with parents, not enough time with friends, cultivating friends.
Yes.
And what happens is you go down that path and you don't realize you're getting lonelier and lonelier at some level, right?
Yes.
And we are socially connected. We need friends. We need that.
Yes.
So that's all the experience part of it, these experiences.
Yes.
Now let's look at anchoring. What anchoring is where you begin to create habits.
Right.
Are there any habits that you're beginning to form now it may not be?
Yeah.
But are there any habits that you're forming as you...
I think
new habits, in other words?
Yes, new habits a lot more actually. I think that has helped me spend some time with myself also. Basic things like just exercising, prioritizing health, saying no to excessive things.
Too many things on your plate.
Yes. And then just making time for the things that matter. So these are things that, again, I mean, these are high level, but on a daily basis, just doing something, spending time about half an hour a day with something that, or someone that means something to you. I think
that's very important. Someone, whether it's a husband, whether it is a wife,
or a parent,
or parents, or children.
That's
the ones who will be with you in your deathbed, really, at some level.
Yes.
Yeah. No, relationships, right?
Yes.
So one of the things I encourage people in this habit forming is something called the daily meds. And in the daily meds, you try and do a little bit of meditation each day. Exercise is very critical. Everyday exercise, whether it's a walk, whatever you're comfortable with. Watching your diet is very important. That's the D part of daily meds. And then the other part, which is very important, is sleep. The S part of daily meds. Very critical, getting enough good sleep. And I struggle with that even now. Somehow it's been hard. Because I'm so used to sleeping at 2, 3 in the morning and not getting good sleep and so on. Changing those habits. So it's not easy, but it's critical. And the final one are the special hobbies. Cultivating some special hobbies. Whatever it is. Do you have any special hobbies?
I dance.
You do? Okay. So, what kind of dancing?
I learned classical dance.
Okay. And have you found time for it?
Not classical, but a little bit of fusion. Bollywood is easy.
Bollywood dancing,
So also something I can do within my house. So yes,
very good.
I do that a little bit.
No, I think this is very important. Not to be so caught up in work that you forget those special delights that you have.
Right.
For me, it's reading. I love reading. I just love reading. And I've been recently reading a book on, it's a wonderful book. It's one of the best books I've read in the last 2-3 years. It's called On Consolation, and I highly recommend it. It's sort of looking at the great figures in European history, and actually Western history. And I wish there was a similar one for Eastern history. But looking at the great figures who went through great suffering, people who were tortured, who were eventually killed, people who lived in great anxiety and fear during the French Revolution, for example, and other times during the Holocaust. And how they survived, what kept them alive, what kept them hopeful, what consoled them, going all the way to the book of Job, right? And in the Christian tradition, actually the Hebrew tradition. This is part of the Hebrew Bible. And looking at the Psalms, the Christian Psalms, beautiful Psalms, the experience of Paul, who was formerly Saul, Paul the disciple, so the apostle. So these experiences of these people who suffered a lot, great tragedy, and what kept them hopeful and kept them, and consoled them. And console actually means to be together. Right. What gave them the comfort of others.
Right.
And so so for me, these things is my special hobby. Just that it gives you a kind of awareness of what really matters. That goes beyond deadlines and work schedules and things like that. So I think it's important to keep the daily meds going.
Right.
It's important to try and get anchored. And I don't want to, in the conversation, the question you asked me, I don't want to make it seem that deadlines don't matter. We are, for many people listening to this, they are managers with deadlines.
Right.
They have outcomes that they have to achieve. Those are important.
Right.
But don't be consumed by them. Don't think that they're the be-all and the end-all. And in fact, when you turn inwards or you turn to relationships and you emphasize quality and you emphasize reliability, you end up becoming more productive. And then the deadlines get blown away in some ways, right? So you could do more than what you thought of.
Right.
It happened to me when I was doing my dissertation. I had to get my dissertation done in 6 months. And if I'd done a deadline-based thing, it would not have happened. But I discovered the Upanishads, I discovered the elements of beingfulness, and I became so focused, intrinsically motivated, that I was highly productive and enjoying it. That is the heart of intrinsic motivation.
Right.
You're very productive and you enjoy it. You love it. So that combination of loving what you do and being productive is really what one hopes to achieve.
Right.
It's not easy.
Right.
But it does happen. Have you had occasions like that where you're highly productive and loved it? Anything in your life where, like dancing, for example?
Yeah. I think yes, there have been times. A lot of times, unfortunately for me, productivity has been directly related to the fear I've associated with the task or the outcome itself.
Yes.
And that's, I think, also inbuilt in our schooling and all of that, where you're rewarded for these kind. Yes. But more recently, and also in dance, like you said, there has been like high levels of productivity, but that level of fulfillment that comes from that, it just feels like the best thing in the world.
Isn't
in
it?
that minute. Yeah.
And you're learning so well, you're performing so well.
Yes. It does give you that motivation to do more.
And you mentioned it's absolutely true. For many of us, productivity comes from fear.
Yes.
Fear driven. If you don't meet this deadline, your job is on the line, or your promotion is on the line. That fear is what one should try to get rid of.
Right.
Productivity without fear is beingfulness in many ways. They're kind of flourishing. So that's hopefully what, through these processes and practices of the daily meds, through these practices of the real journey, the recognition, experience, anchoring, and leading by example is what we call the real journey. That real journey hopefully will allow people to be productive, to flourish, and to enjoy the process and find deep meaning in it. Thank you.